So today I'll be in conversation with Archana, who you can see here on the screen. Archana Nilavar, she has 24 years of experience in digital media strategy, e-commerce marketing, and advertising, and worked with some of the power brands like PepsiCo, Adobe, and currently she works with Google, and she's leading the media solutions team at Google, which is supporting US advertisers in the finance, health, pharma, and travel domains. A very warm welcome, Archana, to you.
Thank you, Smita.
And so before we, dive into this conversation, would you like to, say anything about yourself or about the topic, and then we dive in?
Yeah, so I'm also going through a coaching program with Coacharya, and Smita is my trainer and mentor. And personally, I think I've really gained from the whole coaching experience, and really looking forward to the conversation today and also interacting with everybody on the webinar. But I just wanted to extend my gratitude for giving me this opportunity. Also praying to the internet gods that there'll be no technical glitches that come in the way. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So before I, start my question answer round with Archana, with to the participants, a request that this space is really for us to think on the questions I'll be asking to Archana, but maybe all of you as leaders reflecting on those questions to be seeing that what are you learning about yourself through those questions, because those are questions which all of you might have actually also have gone through, right? And either you will be learning something from Archana's experience, or you will be reminded of something about your own experience as well. Yeah, so let's start with this question, and to the audience first. Please feel free to put it on the chat box. According to you, what aspect of leadership can be part of conscious leadership? According to you, what aspect of leadership can be part of the conscious leadership? Hi, Samir. Nice to see you. Do type in the chat box as to what do you think, and this is a unique answer about that you will have your opinion about it. While you're reflecting on the chat, Archana, let's start.
Yeah.
So like most of the time, the leadership in organization is expected to be having always a positive attitude and mindset, but we know that because of the pressures of work, and all the hustles that we have with life, what about those difficult emotions like anger and fear or frustration that leaders inevitably experience? So what is, I mean, can you share an example of when you had to work with a difficult emotion very consciously, not suppressing it, or also not getting hijacked by it?
Yeah. I think great question, Smita. I think the volume of work and the number of leadership development programs that focus on the positive psychology are quite a few. But I think really looking at what are some of the negative emotions, and what leaders can go through, and neglecting them really impacts how we show up in these situations. Um, I'll just get to the example, but what has really helped me is actually building self awareness. And that's something that I've really tapped into through the whole Kocharya program itself. And the aspect about how do you really engage with negative emotions rather than suppressing or being overwhelmed by them. So, the example that comes to my mind is this critical project that I've been leading. And a few weeks back, we actually faced a delay because of an unforeseen technical issue. And the project is crucial, teams are working behind it, and the initial reaction that I had was intense frustration bordering onto anger. And just the exercise of acknowledging and naming these emotions, right, is the first crucial step. And it's also not to judge oneself or judge what these emotions are, whether they are negative or not, but just to be aware and observe. I think that becomes really important. And when we talk about awareness, we have the whole aspect of reflecting on what are some of the physical emotions as well that we are experiencing, right? And you would the the aspects that I recall from that moment was, the pulsating temples, your heartbeat racing, fists are clenched, and you're really in that moment of reaction. And I think what I have consciously done when I start tapping into these negative emotions is really creating a space. And for me, the way that I create that space is just taking a few deep breaths. And what that does is actually creates this gap, which I think is really powerful. You kind of create that gap between the trigger of that incident and the emotions that you're feeling it, because in that gap you're then allowing for reflection and inquiring into what you're experiencing, and that leads you to then making some intentional choices. So this particular instance, what I ask myself is, what am I feeling, like what is the kind of anger, frustration that I'm feeling, and then why am I experiencing this emotion. And you have the realization that this project really matters to me, right? It's important, and this delay is really threatening the progress of that project. But really, what is the underlying need that is coming from these emotions? Is it my need to have a certain sense of control and certainty on that project and be able to track progress? And when you identify those emotions and what need is it arising from, you also start asking yourself if the reaction and emotions that you're experiencing, are they really serving the purpose of that project. So that's where you also start shifting to what your potential approach would be, like calling a meeting with the tech team, expressing your disappointment, and then you realize that it isn't really serving the purpose. So there is that clear shift that happens to moving from self awareness, observing it, and then also pivoting to the others. And that's where you start considering the other person. What was the potential challenges they could have faced? We know that it wasn't intentional. So that's where the empathy and the reasoning comes in, and it creates a shift in how you can now move forward. And then it was about calling for that meeting with the technical team, really understanding it from their position in terms of what challenges did they face, and what support can my team give them, and how can we really move forward. So I think the biggest takeaways for me has been that to move forward versus being stuck in that emotion, that pause and that self-awareness, I think, is really important. And one realization that I've had through the negative emotions that I've experienced is, suppressing it can really be exhausting. And when you suppress it or try to brush it away, then the way I experience it is that I know I'm not going to come across as authentic or unresolved. And one of my values is being authentic. So, which is where that odds with what you're feeling and the values becomes a little clearer to you. And then you're really able to process it in a very constructive way. So if I were to just recap, I think self-awareness is at the core of it, naming the emotion, and then creating that gap so that you're able to process it. And I think what is really key is not to be in that judgmental phase. uh, yeah, so I think that's been my experience with difficult emotions.
Thank you, Archana. If I have to share with your experience as a learning, what I really see is name it to tame it is what we say for emotion. So that is something which you have shared. And also deep diving into understanding where that emotion is coming from. So again, emotions, they say, are messengers of needs. So are we able to identify that need behind that emotion rather than just being reactive about it. Thank you for, vulnerably sharing this example, Archana. So the other thing which this takes me to the other question, and which you partially also answered when how did your leadership then changed, right? So when you were able to take care of these, so to say negative, we really don't want to categorize in that sense, but once you have taken care of this about yourself, then how did it change your leadership? So empathetic is one thing. Is there anything else that you would like to add there?
I think teams really, they say even a whisper from a leader is like a scream, right? And teams are constantly looking at how leaders are reacting, responding, showing up in these situations. So, they are probably anticipating your behavior or how you will show up in these situations. And I think just modeling that calmness and moving it into a constructive phase. And honestly, even about taking that opportunity at a later stage to really share vulnerably that it's not like, you didn't experience those emotions, but it is how you, process them, which I think also kind of humanizes you with people. You're not like a superhuman who does not face these emotions. It's about how you really channelize it and how do you process it so that you're able to move forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. uh, this really is about the mirror neurons that you are talking about, Archana. So the research shows that, when the leader is stressed, anxious, or disengaged, these emotions really have those ripple effects on the teams as well. And therefore, this really validates why working on difficult emotions is not just for, development of self, but it's also a business imperative. Are we able to, understand the importance of it? Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I would want to just take a moment to read the. There have been some responses on the chat with the first question. Thank you all for reflecting along with us and sharing. Beautifully sharing his leader's presence is contagious to inspire Bhavin. That's a great point. One aspect of conscious leadership for me is self-reflective awareness. It's amazing. Empathy. Okay. Thank you all, for your responses. Now, given what Archana and I were talking about, these mirror neurons, I have another question for all of you to, reflect. So just think about your, last meeting, and then think about as to what was your dominant emotional state. Okay. What I would want you to do is type on the chat box as to what that dominant emotional state was. Don't just press in and send the responses as of now. Just type in and put a stroke there. And what could be those, right? Like, were you centered? Were you calm? Was it stressed? Were you feeling frustrated? Was there any confusion? So anything that you can reflect on as a dominant emotional state. And I'm just pausing and giving a moment for you to just type it and not send the button as of now. There is another follow-up question. Okay. So I hope all of you are, writing on the chat box. The follow-up question, and after that stroke, what you have to, again, the question for you to reflect is, what was your team's dominant emotional state there? And now, after that, stroke, just put that and then send it on the chat. Frustrated and fear. Okay. Angry, upset. Any more frustration, angry. Skepticism and fear. Okay. Ungrounded and disorganized. All right. So, if you look at these, Archana, if you are also, just seeing this, and that's exactly anxiety confused. So again, research says that what you as a leader will feel is feeling is will be 70% aligned with how the team would feel. And that's about that mirror neurons which we would, unknowingly, unconsciously pass on. When we know that, as a team with all the, targets and the goals that we need to achieve, what is the state of emotion that you would like your team to be at most of the times? Yeah. Thank you so much for, taking this question and going through this exercise. um, Archana also earlier talked about, when there is an emotion triggered and there is a pause, right? So there is an incident, there is a trigger, and between the trigger and the reaction, the pause. So there is a research, again, neuroscience, which talks about 6 seconds between the emotional trigger and reaction. Now, knowing that you have the 6 seconds is in your hands, yeah, what is it that you would like to use it for? This is like a space where you can commit to this group of, we have around 40-45 people here, just saying that what is it that you would do when an instant like this happens. Okay, moving on. Archana, now coming back again to sharing with you and asking you. So vulnerable leadership, many leaders struggle with how how much humanity can one show without losing the credibility or overwhelming the teams, right? So I want to be vulnerable because as leaders, that is what, when we show, is again what we would invite. However, the distinction that we need to maintain between authentic vulnerability and emotional dumping, if I have to call it, so what is your internal compass to be managing these two aspects as a leader?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent follow-up question as well, Smita, and one that is very relatable because even when I reflect back on, a few years back, uh, some of the things that two of my values are, like I mentioned, authenticity. The other thing that I really value is building site safety with my team, right? And I think I was somewhere between that authentic vulnerability, but also at times slipping into emotional dumping, right? And we do it unknowingly. We feel like, sharing everything about us is an invitation for others also to know more about us. And I think it's like a tension that you need to navigate between authentic vulnerability and emotional dumping, right? And it's literally a paradox. And like you mentioned, how do we continue to come across as being humane and relatable, or humane, relatable, while at the same time moving into emotional dumping or oversharing can also impact the way teams experience us, because they are also looking to us for stability, clarity, right, to really lead them forward. And I think the three things that I use to guide uh, you know the kind of sharing I want to engage in, uh, there are three aspects that I consider. One is the intention, the second is the boundaries, and third is actually asking, who is this serving, the sharing, right? So, if I start with the first one, which is intention, I think when there is authentic vulnerability, it is really to share your experiences, your mistakes, but from a very constructive angle to build that trust and to foster those connections and create psychological safety. But on the other end, when you are not being mindful about the level of sharing, it can literally be like you're offloading a personal burden. uh, it's giving me maybe emotional relief, but honestly, it is at the expense of others. And what is most important is there is no clear constructive purpose behind, oversharing and venting, or you know those aspects. The second aspect about boundaries, it is about sharing in a way that offers relevant insights to your teams on what you underwent, what were the struggles you faced. So it is for them, it is to repackage it into what did you learn and how others can benefit from it. And obviously there the boundary is that you don't need to share every personal detail. Draw the line at where it is meaningful for the team. And finally, the most important one is, who is this serving, whose purpose is it serving, and how is it serving that person's purpose. If you're bringing yourself into the equation, and if this is helping you uh, you know have that emotional outpouring, then it's not serving anybody a purpose. In fact, it can create discomfort with the team. It can even erode their confidence in your stability. But if you think about an authentic sharing that comes from a space of wanting to help the team learn from your experiences, I think it shows up as a mistake that you're acknowledging, a challenge that you overcome, and it actually moves people into like a collective problem solving. It signals to the team as well that it is totally okay for them to also share. uh, and honestly, I really think of leadership like a container metaphor. uh, the leader is creating that space as a container for their teams to feel safe, to feel comfortable expressing themselves. So for me, authentic vulnerability is offering a window into that container, into your side, right? Which allows them to take a peek into you. The emotional dumping is punching a hole into that container and let everything flow out, right? So people in the container are also drained. So I think that's like, for me, like a quick and easy visual metaphor to really check myself whether which spectrum am I operating in.
Amazing. Beautiful. That's a great metaphor for all of us to walk away with. This reminds me, of an example, Jana. So I'm an ex-banker. I worked with as a in a branch, so corporate branch banking, and on a Saturday afternoon. So Saturdays it's normally like a half day working in the branch, and the we were just about to wrap up, and it was like the branch was shut at 1, but the back office work was going on till 4 p.m. And then I, along with another, friend of mine, both of us new into banking. I was in the general banking operations, and she was managing the trade finance. So she printed a bank guarantee, which was wrongly printed. Okay, and after the print was out, she saw that it's a wrong print. She tore it into pieces and put it in the dustbin. Post the work, we left and we reached. So if anybody from here is from Delhi, so this, and Archana, you are, so from Connaught Place to Malviya Nagar is 1 hour bus drive. We came back home, and we got a call from the branch manager saying, "Come back office, something urgent." So I said, I mean, he called her, but then I went along because Delhi after a point of time, 7 p.m. and all, at that time not very safe. So I went along to accompany her. We reached branch, and as soon as we came there, the branch manager told her, "It looks like a bad choice to hire you." That was the sentence he said as soon as she we came in, and he handed over a sack full of torn papers. He said, "You have torn the bank guarantee. Now take all of it out, search for the bank guarantee papers, and join it. Till the time you don't finish that, you cannot go back home." So we started that work at 6:37. There was an office boy along who accompanied and who also helped us. By 10:30, we could actually assemble the bank guarantee. We handed over, and we said, "What is this document going to do?" Tone bank guarantee. Of course, it's a big mistake. It's a legal document. So in the banking space, we're not allowed to tear such documents. It would have just been kept because it has numbers and all of that as well. But when I think of the example, I mean the beautiful sharing with that intention, and what you shared about the vulnerability part of it, the container, and that hole in the container, I'm just reflecting on this example to be saying that what could have been different there, which would have inspired, rather than after so many years of it, it has left that kind of a remark in the head saying, was it true leadership? If and now in retrospect, if I think only a question like, if it would have started with that note saying, it looks like I didn't explain to you that these documents cannot be done. Only if that was the start of the sentence, rather than saying that it looks like a bad hire. So yeah. Okay. All right. So moving again ahead now. So Archana, for you, it's like, you are in this space of coaching, and you've kind of, over the period of 3 months, and I know you've been sharing all the impact, the space is giving you. So there is an internal shift for you happening along this journey, and you're a part of a system, you're part of multiple systems. There is a family system, there's organizational space and all of that. So have you ever experienced that tension, which causes, because you have now evolved in your learning, and the culture that you work is still, it kind of is not ready for a leader like you?
Yeah, I think it's earlier I used to frame it as a struggle, talking about my position versus the other. And it always seemed like this struggle or this tension, right? Where you're not able to you're not able to bring the two together. Uh, and one of the things that, as an example that I wanted to share is, I'm somebody who thrives in change. I see change as an opportunity to grow. I really enjoy the ambiguous. Again, it's probably my wiring, my background, but when I hear about ambiguity and change, and Smith, I think we've discussed this as well in the coaching sessions. I literally have this beaming smile on my face, and I'm super excited about what can be done. And I remember a few years back, I used to constantly think of this is something new that we can do, you know, thinking up ideas, thinking up, opportunities through changes. And I think I was a little blind to how others experience change. And I see this in that context that it's not, it's quite often that you are in a certain position when it comes to a situation, but your teams might be in a very different situation. And I think in our workplace, and I think this is a reality of most companies, they're constantly reinventing themselves to bring in, the efficiencies. And change is almost something that all teams grapple with, right? And when I say grapple with, there is that struggle of processing that change, how to navigate that change. And I think what I've been very intentional about is to, similar to how there is that self awareness about how I experience situation, it's a combination of self awareness and an empathetic curiosity to find out where others are at in that situation, right? So it's acknowledging your own emotions while also taking the time to understand what are the emotions others are experiencing. And that's where I think the shift happens. And end of the day, people process change very differently. And in this particular situation, where I'm excited with change and my teams are probably feeling anxiety, apprehension, fear, unknown. I think it's important to again name the elephant in the room. If I'm going to, approach a team meeting, fully excited, rara, I'm being blind and deaf to what others might be experiencing. So I think really creating that space for people to express how they are experiencing it. So similarly, acknowledging, naming, normalizing it, and then also, you know humanizing it, saying that it's totally okay to experience these emotions through change. That kind of gives people the comfort that they are now able to refocus to knowing that there is somebody who understands what they are experiencing. And then you can start building from what is, why is that anxiety coming. So then you go into that similar process I spoke about earlier, but with your team. And oftentimes it might need literally, individual conversations, because each one is unique, their position is unique, their needs, value systems, beliefs, all of which are at the behind the way they experience change is crucial. So given that I'm a manager of managers, I think I start by having these conversations with my managers first, because if I'm not helping them, you know process the change, then similar to what we spoke about earlier, the mirroring of their anxiety is going to percolate forward. So I think that's something that I've been intentional and about. And the other thing is, you just listen actively, you're curious, you stand in their shoes, and you don't assume anything, right? All of the, I think, aspects about coaching to help really understand where they're coming from. And the other aspect is, you literally need to live that mindset and be patient with change, and also be comfortable with creating pockets of change. You're not going to change everything overnight, but consider a culture shift in smaller pockets that actually allows you to create that systemic change. And eventually, I feel like the aspect that I spoke about managers, it's about finding allies, people who can make that shift, and then they become your partners in, influencing the change and making it more systemic. Uh, and I think what is really important is to focus on some small wins, because change can seem enormous. So making those small wins, shifts, and then keeping that feedback loop ongoing, so that you are creating that virtuous cycle of uh, collectively moving through that change. Uh, so I do believe that systemic change is very ambitious, but I think what the systemic change can look like also needs to be realistic and, in smaller uh, leaps and bounds.
Mm. Yeah. Great. So rather than seeing it like really huge, just addressing small pockets to be reaching there. Amazing. And in a way, Archana, you spoke about the conscious leadership for you when you say about the coaching mindset, whether it is being open or being whether it is about curiosity. So yeah, okay. Um, so this is one action sorts that you are taking is to find allies and people who can partner. Any other aspect of how you could approach to influence systemic change? So these pocket approaches, but is there anything else that you would be wanting to do?
Um, I think the active listening is really important, because people need to really be heard. So that is one aspect that becomes really important. And it's also about celebrating those shifts and changes, right? uh, because if you're not also seeing how far you've come, then it can seem like, you're motoring through this. So I think that consistent messaging, the consistent support, the consistent curiosity, empathy needs to, be an approach. And I think of it as, like, train the trainer, or really empower people with the frameworks, right? uh, because they might be experiencing it as they are interacting with me, but how can you also arm them with some of these frameworks, right? It's about spelling out what has helped you and inviting them to see if that is helpful for them, because eventually you want them to be to champion their own, their own process, and also be able to self coach, uh, and that's when they experience the change, right? Because they'll see you as a support, but if you empower them with the framework, then they really become, uh, they feel empowered and they feel self-sufficient to a large extent on how can they replicate this if they are faced with a challenge. And the beauty is that I think these frameworks are not limited to the workspace, right? It's about all interactions, whether it is at home or in any of your relationships.
Absolutely. You know, this, I'm smiling. This reminds me of an example. So earlier in my cohort, there was a leader from the organization who is, as a CHRO, learning the skills of coaching and then going back to workplace to be applying. And then he said, you know what, this is not working. And then we had like a coaching conversation to be, and the outcome of that was like, while the CHRO is actually coaching the teams, but then the team members, their readiness is only for mentoring. They're not, they don't understand the difference between coaching and mentoring. And all through their interactions earlier with the CHRO has been in the capacity of being a mentor. So now the CHRO changes his role and operates as a coach, which is not, they're not being receptive to what coaching is. And then, we joked around exactly to what you said, teach them what you have learned. So we teach Lassie framework, as a listening tool and having that conversation. He went to the team and taught them, and he's like, now you apply this framework of Lassie with us. Yamini, maybe if you are, if you can post for the audience here the blog on Lassie. I can see most of them are Kocharia, but anybody not from Kocharia community will learn about this framework. All right, thank you, Archana, again for those for the sharing. Moving on with my next question, and again, before I go there, based on what you said about this, the mismatch, which may seem like a mismatch, Peter Senge very beautifully in his research say that organizations are that complex webs of interconnected relationships. When one part evolves faster than the others, tension is inevitable. But with the examples or with the the approach that you shared, we know that there will be tension, but there is a way that we can, adapt to manage that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the whole, the polarities which we went through in one of, I think in Google, we are constantly coaching managers to, consider the polarities that we operate in. And I've realized that typically we are guiding leadership through specific, pockets of change and points of change. But honestly, I think I've experienced polarities as the new normal. It's not like it is meant only for change. And what I really like about the model that I worked is, how do you navigate from one side of the polarity, and the fact that, the shape of that polarity is also not, really symmetrical. So I've found that the polarities framework is also really helpful in, some of these where you feel like teams are at a certain point and the rest are at another point. So
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for reminding of the polarities framework. All right. So let's go ahead. Now, all of this in theory, sounds so amazing. Very, very easy to come sit, talk about it. But when it is a real crisis, situation with tough deadlines and stress team members and, the constant pressure that we are in, how do you again maintain that intentional? You used the word earlier, intentional. So how do you maintain that internal leadership when everything feels, so urgent, so important, so how do you do that?
yeah, I think one of the things that I have started doing is reflections. Uh, and to the point that you mentioned, we are not going to get it right all the time. Uh, but like a weekly, daily reflection, especially when, first of all, you got to acknowledge that there are times when you'll slip up, right? Uh, and accept that you're not going to be the way you hope to be every time. So that little bit of self empathy with the intention of using that to improve. So I think that is something that I've started doing a lot more actively, uh, since the last few weeks, months. And you're totally right. I think when rubber hits the road, and when there is a stressful situation, there is that tendency to slip back into old habits, the reactions coming in, all of the pauses and everything suddenly go away. So I do believe that there are times that happen, but I think the way that I have started handling these situations is to make sure that the team is co-opted into that process, because one is, again, just taking that collective pause, because everybody recognizes that this is a high stress, high stakes, uh, you know intense deadlines, work pressure, and everybody is sensing that anxiety. So just meeting up together as a team to first, again, acknowledge, pause, to be able to then also you know uh, kind of humanize work. At the end of the day, we are all humans, right? And it's not about just getting tasks out. So making sure that everybody feels heard, everybody is discussing what that situation looks like for them, but then honestly really prioritizing. Everybody knows that everything can't be turned around, so you really refocus the energies. I think it's that constant awareness, pause, acknowledge, refocus, and then you move towards, okay, what do we want to collectively achieve now? Everything is not doable, and that again makes them, shifts it from being reactive to really responding to situations. And when you do it as a team, I think you're co-opting. Everybody is a part of the solution, versus everybody is experiencing these reactions, and potentially everybody is just reacting to, you're being very mindful about what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve, and then you kind of move forward. uh, yeah, so I think it's also pre-wiring yourself, right? Because like I mentioned, you will slip up, but even having this approach, building that muscle to this approach, I think is what I have seen, what I'm on the journey of. But I think I've experienced great leaders really doing that, and really well. And what amazes me is that it comes naturally to them now. So I think the practice is what really moves the needle. And I'm reminded of the whole framework of moving from conscious incompetence to unconscious competence. And I think that's the shift. Just knowing that you'll encounter these situations, and honestly being prepared as to how you're going to navigate these situations.
Amazing, Archana. It's really you know amazing to see how in few months, yeah, I can really see the way that you have changed few narratives around, and then the way that you are really talking about sustenance, right? Like our topic has this word sustainability. uh, though it appears for us that somebody is just doing it, and how like it looks like without any effort, but it is the result of all the practice. And while the practice may be on, they may be zero results at that time, right? we are just seeing the outcome of that as of now. Beautiful. So we'll take a moment now just to reflect and check on, some of the sharing here on the, and if there is any question, Yamini, if you may help us with, because I see a couple of posts here. I'm curious, you mentioned you started now with reflection. What is your trigger and what has changed? Archana, this is for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, are you asking about what was the trigger to the reflection, or me reflecting on what the triggers? Yeah. So when I started out the coaching program, and what the universe wants me to be, I think the one thing that showed up for me is, what is my identity, right? How do I see my identity? And there was a realization that it needs to be more than, I love my work, I really enjoy my role, but there is this entire inquiry about, there needs to be a purpose beyond just work. Not that that is not fulfilling, but beyond work, what is it that I want my life to mean, and where do I want to invest my energies and my effort? And I think the simple thing that showed up for me is, how can I be a better human being, right? And I think getting onto that journey is about self awareness. In fact, the one thing that I have mentioned to Smita and our cohort is, you start out with coaching to really help others, but it's, for me, the mark shift has been in how, what I've discovered about myself. And until you don't discover yourself, and you're not self aware of what your values are, what your beliefs are, it's difficult to take yourself out of an equation in a coaching conversation, right? Because coaching is not about you, it's about you enabling others to really discover what their potential can be. And I love the way Smita spoke to us about interferences, right? So it's that constant deliberation of, is my interaction serving me? Are my questions, my responses to people about me, or is it about them? And when you are hoping to get onto this journey of better self awareness and being a better version of yourself, I think reflection becomes so integral to it. Because otherwise, how do you really see if you've made progress? I think one is reflection, and the other is also observing how you are showing up to your interactions and your relationships. And I can say that the whole reflection, self awareness, reflection, and that whole cycle of revisiting myself, I have felt a lot more calmer over the last few months. Otherwise, there was this constant struggle of, you look back and you sense that you are anxious, you are worked up, you are stressed. You want to do better in situations, but that is also causing you stress, right? A well intentioned thing can also cause you anxiety and stress. But yeah, so I think that's what that's what's been my journey.
Yeah. And so Archana, that container, the metaphor that you use, I see that you are, putting in a lot of efforts to groom it, paint it, polish it, and make it really strong enough for you to be holding your clients in that container.
That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Andy. Another question. I like the fact that you hold a safe space to acknowledge emotions for your team. This is so critical in a fast-paced workspace. Can you read the full question? It's still a little bit.
Yeah, I think, how do you encourage your teams to also go through self reflections?
Mhm.
Yeah. um, I can tell you, some instances where it has worked for me. um, I think the powerful questions, again, one of the interactions with my team member last week, right? And when they are sharing with you, you really ask them a question that makes them reflect, right? It literally pauses them, makes them rethink what they're asking, how they're framing that situation. So I've found that every interaction can create that opportunity where if you frame the question in a way that it really resonates, and obviously that question has to come out of that curiosity for the person you're engaging with. And I've started really pivoting a lot more to, I think, the Lassie framework and really asking from a position of curiosity, right? Because at times teams can also get a little stumped if you're asking them questions. So, really making your intentions known, first of all, is important because teams can come to you for mentoring and they probably want answers. So, it's important to clarify that you want to engage with them in a process that allows them to hopefully uncover and unpack their situation and arrive at the answers themselves. So the more often I engage in these coaching questions which make people stop and reflect, I do believe that that creates the catalyst for them to hopefully set aside some time to self reflect, because I found that any of these calendar blocks that we typically put as focus time, reflection time, end up being calendar blocks until you really don't act on it in a very meaningful way. And I think interactions are the most powerful.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, Chitra, thank you for that question, and I hope you know the answer served you well. There was one beautiful sharing by Andy, I think, before. My view on your information is that systemic change has to start at the top of the management and need to be multiplied. I think that's such a embodied by the managers levels below. It's like a pyramid. The top is shining most and guides this path. I think this is a very, very good sharing, and we do observe in organizations now more so that they really want to percolate it down. So it starts at the top and then it goes to the next level. But Archana, any take on that? And especially like maybe from Google's perspective.
Uh, can you just repeat, Smita? I kind of
Yeah,
got lost.
sure. I mean, Andy is making a point there that
Oh,
any systemic change has to start at the top and then need to be multiplied and embodied by the managers levels below. So
yeah.
I'm curious to know your take on it, and specifically any sharing about Google around that.
No, absolutely. I think what really stands out for me in Google is the focus on people, the focus on growing, developing people, the culture at its core, which we refer to as googliness, I think is empathy. And the nice thing about googliness is when you experience it. It's easier to experience than to talk about what it is, but you know it when you experience it. And the beauty is that it takes different shapes and forms on how people show up for each other. And uh, you know. So I think right from the manager development, we've got manager programs, we've got G2G coaches who are internal coaches that offer a variety of topics that people can seek help on. We've got learning and development programs for leaders that really talk about the importance of coaching. I think mentoring is one, but there is a huge emphasis on coaching because I think there is an acknowledgement that coaching really opens up avenues for people in a way that mentoring can help, but coaching is truly systemic. It's sustaining. uh, but obviously we spoke about habits and what we do in high stress environment, right? So I think what I have focused on is not just to stop at the training, but really practice, and do more of it, and seek feedback. uh, yeah, but that is definitely acknowledged by Google as a key culture code that we need to leaders, managers need to embody and grow with.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And we're just coming to the close of our time. We will definitely download the chat. We could not read all comments, but we would read, and if there is any question, we would definitely get back to you. So as we say our goodbyes, I am just wanting all of you, as we are also reflecting on this question, to be saying, what's one practice or insight? Archana, maybe you can answer, and then in the chat everyone else can reflect on this as to what's that one practice or insight you'd want every leader listening to experiment. And since you spoke about really learning in bite size and pocket size, so maybe we'll say just for this week,
Yeah,
what is that experiment for this week that you would want invite leaders to do?
I think for me it has to be pause. I think the pauses while listening, the pauses while you are experiencing, I think the pause and the gap is so powerful, because that literally is that space which can allow you to pivot perspectives, inquire. For me, I think pauses are my go-to, in terms of practice.
Okay. Thank you so much, Archana. It was very, very insightful. Thank you for going through all these questions and sharing all your the wisdom and being vulnerable. So I really value your time and the sharing. Yeah. Thank you all for joining in. So it's time for pause. We'll meet again next month on the first Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah. See
Thank you
you.
so much, Lata, and thank you, everyone. It was truly an enriching experience for me. Thank you.